Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a blessed and amazing day. This is Jessie with Green Eyed Ambition. Today on Let's Talk Business, I have the super intelligent, smart money guru, like help. She's like Miss Janelle with the budget shop. I felt that right now a lot of people are focusing on building their businesses, but not really understanding the importance of knowing their budget and knowing their numbers. So I just want to say thank you, Janelle, for coming and talking with me today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here to talk with you.
Fantastic. And so I would love for you to share a little bit about like what got you into budgeting.
Okay, well, let me just give you a little bit of background about me.
Mhm.
So, I have an extensive, I guess, professional career in budgeting. I when I got out of graduate school many, many moons ago, I got a master's degree in public administration, and my first job out of grad school was actually in the governor's budget office for the state of Kansas, of all places.
Wow.
I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee, so I went to school in Knoxville. And so that first job really gave me that first taste of budgeting. And so I've worked in budgeting for 17 plus years as a budget professional. So I specialize in budgeting and strategic planning. And so along the way, I've always had other entrepreneurial adventures, so to speak, in various things, including a product placement business for award shows. I've done design for real estate flips, but it's never been anything related to my actual expertise. So fast forward to about a year, almost a year and a half ago, I decided to combine my love for entrepreneurship with my true expertise, which is budgeting. So that's in a nutshell how I got here.
And I like the fact that you mentioned that you've done both strategic planning as well as budgeting. For someone that I feel that entrepreneurship is a going road where we're a growing road where we're always having to learn more. Where I find that some people that watch this video, they may be brand new or they may be more experienced in their industry. Are you able to give a little bit of information about what's the difference between strategic planning and having your budget? Like, what would that interpret for somebody?
Well, the two are actually linked. A lot of people think that when you approach budgeting, that you start by jumping right into the numbers. And that is so far from the truth. The first thing you want to do is actually start with the planning aspect. You want to start with your goal setting. So that's the first step, the most important step of budgeting is to actually have a strategic plan or to set your goals. And your budget then becomes the financial representation of those goals. So, a lot of people, what makes budgeting, I think, more complicated than it needs to be is that people just kind of jump in and don't know where to start or don't know what questions to ask. But if you back up a little bit and think about, okay, what is it that I want to accomplish? Then that's when you can figure out, okay, now my budget can be my permission slip to do the things that you need to get done. So they're linked. Yeah.
I love that you gave that analogy because I do find that if someone is budgeting, it's not always based off of what they're aiming to do as a strategy. It's just the novelty of how we go about if we are budgeting in our personal life. That's what we're going with, like, oh, I know I make this amount this month and this is how I pay my bills, compared to actually planning for the future of your company to be healthy and have that process. What do you find are the biggest challenges people face when it comes to budgeting in general?
In general, I would say one of the things, well, the first thing, you want to make sure that you keep your personal and your business finances separate. A lot of people commingle those, and that's where you can get into trouble. So, one, um, I, I've seen that more often than not where people commingle the two. Another thing, one of the biggest challenges is that um, I'm not a mindset type guru or anything like that, but a lot of it is mindset. A lot of people think that it either takes too much time or that it's too hard, or they just don't see the purpose of it, right?
Mhm.
And so the key to remember is that if you have a system in place, it's all about establishing the system, even for budgets. And it's not rocket science. I always like to say it's part art and part science, but not rocket science. So just I hate when people have those limiting beliefs thinking, oh, it's time to do the budget, this is going to take too much time or it's too hard. It's not. Every CEO, every business owner can learn the basic fundamentals to manage their business day to day from a budget perspective.
Do you, when people do come to you, what's the biggest, I guess, roadblock that or challenge or mind block that they're having when they're coming to you about budgeting? When someone is like already contacting you and they're wanting to be your client, what's the biggest challenge that they're already coming to you with?
One of the challenges is not really having a good handle on what's going in, like what's flowing in and out of their business, meaning there's not a good system to track their expenses. Um, and a lot of that goes back to, again, automation.
Mhm.
A lot of people, oh, and I'll say this too, a lot of people manage their funds by um, managing their bank account. They kind of do bank account budgeting. So either they're looking at their Stripe accounts, and they're saying, oh, okay. So they're looking at chart trends in their Stripe account, but they're not really looking at management reports, or they're not looking at a dashboard. The thing I like to do and the thing I like to recommend is that business owners use a dashboard, sort of like a one pager that
Mhm.
has key performance indicators that they need to look at each month to understand where they are financially in their business. So it just goes back to not really having all of the pieces in place in terms of, having a good handle on their expenses. Um, and, a lot of that can be solved by, it might just be needing a bookkeeper, or you might just need a bookkeeper one time, depending on the volume of transactions and the size of your business. Maybe you just need someone to set up your chart of accounts for you, and then you can maintain it going forward. It just depends. But it's kind of like first wrapping your mind around how your chart of accounts need to be set up so that you can track everything that's coming in and out of your business.
And one of the things that we spoke about previously was about the difference between needing a bookkeeper, an accountant,
Mhm.
a planner, essentially. Would you be able to get for, because there are three different types of individuals you can use for your financial needs within a business. Everyone may not know that. So I think that it's very important for us to talk about that today.
Yes. Okay. So a bookkeeper is if you need to if you need someone to handle your daily transactions. So if you have a lot of transactions and you can't keep up with it yourself, a bookkeeper is someone who can stay on top of those transactions for you on a daily basis or weekly basis, depending on how your business is. Or you just may need them to just set your system up in QuickBooks or whatever type of software you use in your business. So a bookkeeper is someone who can just keep your books straight, keep your financial transactions entered properly. An accountant is someone, a lot of people may talk to their accountant once a year. They may talk to them around tax time. They may utilize an accountant to help structure their business in terms of whether or not they're going to set up an LLC or an S corp or what have you, depending on the type of accountant he or she is. And then, of course, if you have use for a CFO, if you have that much volume in your business where you really need someone to be more forward thinking and more strategic about your business and also depending on how you're growing, the type of growth you're looking for, you're seeking, then you might need a CFO if you've gone to that next level. Of course, it gets more expensive as you go up the
Yeah.
up the ladder there. And I like to always say that accountants are usually focused on making sure, and they also prepare your financial statements. I want to say that too. But they're more focused on making sure that transactions that have occurred are recorded properly. So they're going to make sure your journal entries are entered properly, that your balance sheet, your cash flow statement, your profit and loss statement, that all of those things are prepared properly.
Mm-hmm.
Budgeting is different from accounting in that it looks forward. We talk more about projections. Um, I'm heavy into projections, and also like think about a basic profit and loss statement. It shows what you spent, your income that came in, and your expenses, and shows what the net difference is. Well, if you set a goal that you wanted to make X amount of revenue by the end of the quarter or by the end of the year, you need a budget column on that statement. And oftentimes, an accountant, a bookkeeper, even a CFO, it just depends on what their background is. They may or may not have a budget on your financials, on your management statements that you look at to manage your business on a daily basis. So think about budgeting, having that extra column that tells you, okay, here was my budget, here was my original goal, and then the expenses are hitting that report, showing you how you're making progress toward that goal. So, yeah.
Question then is, what would be a sign that someone needs to actually start working with? I don't know if it's even a cookie cutter answer, but what would be some indicators that maybe it is time for me to get a bookkeeper or work with someone on our budget? Like, what would be some signs that it's time to at least start exploring that?
Um, Definitely, if you are feeling, yeah, it's not a cookie cutter answer, but if you are feeling overwhelmed, if you're not able to keep track of your daily transactions, then I would definitely say you need a bookkeeper. And a lot of times I don't like to say it depends on how much revenue your business is bringing in, because you could be bringing in quite a bit of money, but you may not have a lot of transactions. You know, especially if you're a consultant and maybe you have big jobs every now and then, you know, you can pretty much track that yourself. You may not need a bookkeeper. But as long as you maybe have your initial system established properly, and it's something that you can maintain yourself, you may not need a bookkeeper. But if you have a lot of volume, you have a lot of transactions, it may be helpful to have a bookkeeper. If it's something that you're struggling with, or you're spending a lot of time working on that when you could be doing revenue generating activities, I would say get a bookkeeper. Um, and I'm sorry, you had a second part. When should you see an accountant, or what was the?
Yeah. When would someone decide, like, oh, well, not an accountant, but have someone that's going to be a bookkeeper, or for budgeting? Like, when would you say, like, if someone's watching this right now and they're like, okay, well, I have an accountant, but how would I know I need to now reach out to Janelle? Like, what would be that indicator that they need that assistance?
Okay. If you are finding that you are, well, let's say I would always recommend that people use a budget. I would recommend everyone to use a budget. If you don't know where to start, then that's when you reach out to me. I would recommend everyone have a budget, because otherwise it's kind of like driving down the street with blinders on. You know, a budget serves as a financial roadmap. So if you're interested in knowing where you're going and where you're going to end up, I would recommend everyone have a budget. I think some people think that, well, my business is too small to have a budget. You should have a budget regardless. Now, if you don't know how to go about putting it together, then you would reach out to me. And I'm more of a coach in that I try to help people. You know, I try to help teach people how to fish, so to speak. Because it's something that you're going to need ongoing, right? There are some basic fundamentals you're going to need ongoing. Also, another key is if you're making money, but you still feel broke, right? A lot of people make money, they see the money coming in, but they still have that broke feeling, right? Like, you know, they're bringing in revenue, but they're not seeing the profits. There's something happening, and it could be on the expense side. It could be, I mean, money could be leaking from somewhere, but what usually that's a symptom of is not tracking all of the ins and outs of what's going on. It allows you to plan in advance. It also allows you to look for growth opportunities. So someone who's also wanting to grow, let's say you are doing very well, but maybe you've reached a plateau. A budget is, again, a financial roadmap that you can create to help get you to that next level.
That's good to know because I find that like these kind of conversations aren't always just accessible to find. And or it's just that a lot of times we don't know what to look for. I mean, the everyday person doesn't always even understand their own personal budget, more or
Yeah.
less how to bring it into the business environment. And I would like to know, like, in what type of services do you provide? Is it detailed as far like what type of budgeting and like what do you provide all in general?
Okay. Well, now there are different types of budgeting, but because I focus on small businesses, although I've helped nonprofits as well,
Mhm.
but they're all different types of budgeting and it depends. And I'll just give you an example like zero based budgeting.
Mhm.
Let's say if you've never really done a budget before for your business, then I would recommend that you take a zero based budgeting approach. And that's just where you start from scratch and kind of justify every expense that you need in your budget. That's kind of what zero based budgeting is. You literally justify every expense that you have, and then you also have to kind of prioritize because we all have a finite amount of revenue, right?
Yeah.
At least to start with. And so if you find that your expenses are, creeping up to more than what your revenue is, that's where the prioritization comes in,
Hmm.
and start working back from there. There's also, if someone has done budgeting, a little bit of budgeting before, or you kind of have a history in your business where there's a pattern that you can kind of go through, you can kind of start with um, what I like to call incremental budgeting, or what is called incremental budgeting. And that's sort of looking at the previous year and then making small adjustments here and there, going forward based on whatever your goals are.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so that would be the
Hmm.
type. Now, what I've done thus far really has been working one-on-one,
Okay.
but I've done a soft launch, but I'm going into a hard launch of a course, because it is just one of me, and because I'm more of a coach. I'm launching a new course, which is called Fuel for Growth. And it is a course that geared toward entrepreneurs that are kind of in that sweet spot that, they don't have a CFO. They may work with their accountant maybe once a year or once a quarter, and they're pretty much on the struggle bus to be the CEO and the CFO at the same time. So that's what that course is for.
Fantastic. And have you set a date when you are going to release it?
Yeah, well, I'm actually starting the wait list next week. So yes,
Awesome.
opening the wait list next week for beginning January, in January.
Awesome. Fantastic. And since with COVID, have you been affected or what are some challenges your business, like your customers have been facing due to COVID?
Well, for me, it's been pretty neutral. And I say that because I'm a solo entrepreneur. And that's one of the reasons why I really want to go into the course, because there's only one of me and there's only so much time that I have.
Hmm.
So I feel I can have the biggest impact with a course. In terms of people that I've assisted in different organizations that I've helped during, I guess, over the past few months, um, a few people have had to get a PPP loan. Um, yeah, there have been some challenges. Some people have actually thrived during this time. Some people, it's been all over the board, really. Yeah, some people have struggled a little bit, and so in situations like that, it's been more of a okay. How do we reduce down? How do we get down to that bare bones budget? You might not be able to control your revenue, but you can focus on expenses. What are your bare bone expenses that you can actually control?
Fantastic. That's great to know. Because sometimes you only hear like the negative side of how businesses are going. And there are going to be some that are very neutral, and then you're also going to have those that are thriving. I would love for you to be able to share what is one challenge that, or obstacle that you faced in your entrepreneurial journey since starting, year and a half in. What's the biggest lesson you've had to learn?
Wow, that's a good question. There've been so many. So um, let's say my biggest challenge. Let's see. I heard you talking about a funnel earlier. And
Mhm.
so so I think getting through the whole I think marketing aspect for me, that's probably been my biggest challenge because I'm not a marketing expert.
Yeah.
I'm a budget expert. And
Yeah.
so trying to navigate all of the marketing aspects and the Facebook ads aspect of everything. I'll say that's been my newest adventure. Yeah.
And so I am still trying to figure out Facebook ads. I have
Yeah.
learned after I've done spent a whole bunch of money that if you're
Mhm.
going to do an ad, you need to have it going into a funnel, whereas a landing page that specifically gets people to do one thing, not just sending them to your website. Because if you send them,
Yes.
and that's
They
okay.
can click all over the place. Yes.
I was like, oh, so that's why all
Yeah.
the money I was spending didn't work. So we get to learn, like that's
Yes.
what business and entrepreneurship is about. It's about those life learning lessons. Um,
Yes.
one of the questions I always like to ask people is, where would you like to see your business in the next 5 years?
Oh, goodness. I would really love for, since I'm launching the new course, I would really love to be able to say that I have truly impacted, several hundred, if not, in the four figures of businesses in terms of increasing people's financial literacy around their numbers. I really think um, that is just so important, especially with the tone of everything going on.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people talking about activism. Financial literacy is activism,
Yeah.
and it's just so important to, um, I don't know, a lot of people I think got left behind with the PPE, and a lot of it was because people just didn't have their financials in order. And, you know, I, yeah, I just want to try to really grow that course, focus. I really want to zero in on that and grow that course to be able to impact as many business owners as possible.
Yeah, and I agree that that was the biggest factor for most of them, because everybody's trying to strike and not strike. They're trying to PayPal and Cash App their way up the plan
Yes,
and not show they're making money. But guess what? When you need to have a loan or show what you bring in and out, if you're doing things underneath the table, you are unable to do so, or show
exactly.
the quantity that will justify getting a certain level of loan. And I think that was for me. I did qualify for one. I, from those that I knew that didn't, I was like, well, because you've been professionally trying to show that you don't make money for years.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I know I got to pay taxes.
Yeah.
Like it is what it is. I'd rather show I made more money and then find legal ways to allocate and justify my expenses compared to not
Yes.
showing that I'm making money. Like you just learn that, especially once your
Yes.
business makes a certain amount of money. You're like, I don't need to hide it. I'd rather just legally make sure I'm not having to do certain things. Um,
Exactly.
so I really appreciate that. And for anyone that wants to connect with you, what are the best ways for them to reach you?
Well, I spend most of my time on Instagram, and it's thebudgetshop.co on Instagram. My website is www.thebudgetshop.co. Those are the best ways. I have a Facebook page, but I'm more active on Instagram. And also, if they go to my Instagram page, they can always click the link in my bio and sign up for my free masterclass to learn more about what's coming with the new course that I have coming up.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so very much for coming to talk with me today and be able to share information, because I feel like the financial piece is often not discussed. In entrepreneurship, we'll see that people are making revenuing, six figures, but we don't know the other end of it. So I love to have financial people to come and talk, because what we may hear is one thing, but what's actually happening behind the scenes is another thing. And it's great to have that kind of conversation.
Yes, awesome. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're so very welcome.